Okay, so let's once again check what we did last. Localhost 400 inside the public directory. What's what's going on now? Connection failed. No connection could be made because the target machine actively refused it. What does that mean? Egbamio. Okay, start now.
So now from local host 200, I would take open this one too.
By the way, it's not just about 200. You can use any number. I'm just the one that like using 200.
200.
Hmm. Okay.
This is homepage.
So what we did the other time was, I think, register. So what we need to do next is the login aspect. Let's go to phpMyAdmin.
No, that means this one will not be here. Only register how many days.
Hey. Even by me looking of the homepage self, you can imagine.
Okay, so this was the two things we did last. So let's just test them again. So let's register something new. Backend and backend. I want to remember my login details this time around because of the login attempt. So backend 123 is the password I used. So username backend. Register. So it's
Let's have the recording.
yeah, Abby.
Okay.
Yeah. Then let's refresh this to confirm that. So it's there. So our stuff is still working. So next is for us to log in and see what is going to happen once we log in. Okay. So login functionality, that's the goal of what we are just going to do today. Today's class won't be long. I need to do some other setup for us to proceed further. So from Thursday, Friday, shall we continue better. So login aspects. So this was the registration part we did, the registration method. So now we need to do login method as well. So I'll just come here below, create a new function method called login. Now this login, to log in, we need just two things, email and password. That's what I'm using, email and password.
Like this.
Yeah?
You are not creating another file for the login like we did the last time.
We are going to work on controller here.
Okay.
So just the point is that this particular class is holding everything that relates to authentication. That's why I even gave it this name. So authentication relates to register, log in, even log out, self join. So that's why I'm putting everything. Everything can just be placed in a method, different methods. So you don't need different like files to do each of them. You can do everything in this particular place. Since we are in the models, and models is just all about database connection. Anyways, let's go on first. So email, password. Now, when someone tries to log in here, I put my email and I put my password. What is going to happen is that once I click login, these two things would kind of like be submitted in a way like we should be able to, well, surely we will be able to access it in, when we are going to get the inputs that the user puts inside. Once I click login now, that all those kind of like requests, post request, submission is get kind of stuff, is set kind of stuff. So we're going to get this stuff and they'll be stored in their name, their inputs name. So it's for us to check the two information that are here and compare it to what we already have here, if any of them tally. So that is what we will be trying to check first. So we need to compare both inputs to be very sure that whatever the person is putting here, the data is present here, which also means that we will have to fetch this data as well. That means I have to like fetch it out, like bring it out, bring this data, all the data that is in this users table, so that you can then bring it out and then compare it with whatever the user puts inside here. Anyways, you see what I'm saying. So what I'm going to do here now, I'm going to write SQL. I'm going to write the normal SQL statement. So to fetch out information from database, we use the word select. This one we use insert because we are putting it inside the database, the register. But in this login, we need to bring out what is already in the database first. So we want to bring out everything, that means all the columns that is inside the users table, where the email, whatever email that the user is trying to submit, to log in with. So what we're trying to aim at now is that once I put my email and I put my password, so once I put this bike man, once I put this email and once I put this password, what's going to happen? Once I click submit now, that email in particular, for example, this particular email now is what is going to enter here. Somehow it's going to enter inside this place, because that's where it will check all the columns for that user. So once you check this email and we know that this email is here, so it will print out all the columns. That means all this stored row like this will come out, will be fetched out. Remember the where condition only checks for a particular section where you want make you bring out. It's not safe to just print out all the whole data like this. If it's like this now, that means you are printing the entire table. That means you are printing the whole rows, all these rows, so 1 row, 2 row, 3 row. But as you put that where condition, you have limited, you just want a particular section that involves a particular email, if that particular email exists. So in this case, we are going to use this email. That means it's going to print out the whole of this column, which is what the asterisk is saying here. It prints out all the columns from the users table where this email exists. And this email exists in this row. So to print out all the column data for this particular row. So that's what that statement is saying. And we're going to get, and remember the user is going to input those two data in our form field. So we're going to eventually get this data, it will be inside this our parameter here, this our email, which we are going to do later on in the controller sha. So it's now for us to bind this email to this email so that SQL will know that, okay, this is the email we are binding with this when trying to select it. So next step, we can do just the way the approach we kind of like are doing here in this way. So I'm going to do try catch. I'm just copy this try catch here, paste. In this case, let me just remove some portions. So try catch. So first of all, we will prepare our SQL statements always. Then we will need to bind the value. So in this case now, the value we are only binding is only email. So I'm just going to write the email, and then the email that is coming from here, which we will do in our controller later on. Just like how the username was coming from here, the password was coming from here, the email was coming from password, and this was how we bind each of them in this section. So that's what we will be doing here. So, but in this case, we only need the email. We only need to bind the email. But that's what we are using to fetch the data, to check where that email is located and bring out all the columns of that particular row. So only the email is what we are binding here in this case. So next, after binding, we need to then execute the statement, which is this. But in this, so execute the statement, prepare, let me join them together. So first of all, prepare the database, bind the value, execute, prepare the database, bind the values, execute. But now we need to do something extra for this login aspect now, for us to compare. So we need to do some kind of comparison in a way. So how can we do that? So the point now is that we need to, this stuff now has executed this stuff, like it has executed that, okay, this, now we can access all the users' data in a way. That's what the execute is doing. So the execute can now access everything like this. You can access all of them. So right now, it's as if this STMT is kind of like holding the data, but we can let it hold it in an associative array format. PDO fetch associative format, and let's name it as user, the variable that is holding it. So now the point now is that we created this place as user, so which means this whole thing now, this data, everything that is inside here is being held here in an associative manner. When we say associative manner, that means what we are seeing here now is something like this. We are seeing something like ID equal to query, username is equal to backend, email is equal to, what was the email I used was, is equal to, I think, letsyscode@mail.com. This kind of setting, then the password too. Then password is the associative array, blah 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 blah. So what you are seeing now like this is what is inside this place now. But what the point is this particular row. So the ID, the key is the ID, the value is 3, the key is the username, the value is backend, the key is email, the value is letsyscode@gmail.com, the key is password, the value is this, our password here. So it's something like this that is being stored inside this user. So let me just comment this thing out like this so you can have an idea of what is happening here. So now the next thing we'll then need to do is for us to compare and verify the password that they are true. So we can say if user, now even we're writing if user is trying to confirm if everything here is true. That means if everything here we did here was successful, and indeed if this user is holding something tangible, which means if it's holding a data like this. So if user, that is kind of like saying, like if it is true, if it's holding something tangible, and also want to also check to verify our password. So there's a function to verify password in PHP, password verify. Now this password verifier holds two parameters. The first one is the password the user will write when logging in, while the second one is the password that is currently inside the database. And for us to get the password that is currently inside the database, remember this user is holding this data. And for us to get this password, remember, although it is hashed, it doesn't mean this password verifier will indirectly unhash it internally, so it's not our business. So the goal here is for us to get this key. And remember, this is an associative array, and for you to use an associative array, if this is user array, for example, now, how can I access the password? For me to print out this password, I will just say user brackets password. So this alone will print for me the value of the password. For example, maybe then when we're doing early PHP now, this is how we used to do when it comes to associative array. So you use the key, the name of the key here. So this will fetch out the value. So this value is what is going to print out in this our echo. And now this, for us to get that value, so that means I'm just going to copy this and paste it in this second parameter, because that's what we need here. We need the hashed password here. So this password is the normal password the login person is using, which is also coming from here. You get? So the person that is logging in will put a password there. It could be fake, it could be real password, and also the person will put an email here. So if this email is legit, surely if their email is legit, it will bind the email here and execute this statement, fetching out all the data that email exists in. And for example, now these are the data that the email exists in. Now we also want to confirm the password, because the user will put a password here. Now that password the user is putting, which will also be stored inside this our login argument. So we also want to verify that that password is the same thing as the current password that is inside the database, which we are getting from this user, because it's also storing an array, and we're going to use this format to get it. So that's why I explain it in this simple way that we used to explain in associative array, how to get the values. So this will get for us the value. So which means in this our case, it will get for us this actual value here, this hash password, this long stuff. That's what it will get for us. Then to verify if they are all true. So if everything like this is true, then it will go to the next step. So I'll remove these two things. They were just for explanation purpose. So if everything is true, then let's just return user. So we just return user. And remember, the user is still holding the whole full data. So the reason I'm returning user because we are just going to add it to session in our controller later on. But if our venture, if it is false, let's just return false. So we are done with setting up the login method like this now inside our database. Now let's move to our controller, login controller. So let's see how to work with this login controller alongside this one we just did here. And let me create this, set this one like this, so it can be seen both of them. Probably let me just adjust it a bit. So when I need it, I will stretch it back. Now in this login aspect, if we go to our routes first, web.php, we have two routes. So this is the first route that gets, this one is just this login / login, what we are already seeing here. / login, that's what we're already seeing here. So this is just showing us this our front end. That's the first route. But the second one, where it's work post, is the submission, clicking on this login button. So that's where the second one is, even though the route is still login, but in as well as it is post, that means we're submitting something now. So that's what will work. And the method we are using here, what we chose to want to use, is the login method. That means I'm going to create a new method here, and I have to name it that exact name, login. So public function login. So this is where I'm going to do the logic of connecting this database and also adding the front end. Okay, well, this one doesn't necessarily need front end, we're just submitting. So we just redirect the user to another page once the login is successful. Okay, so what are the logic for this? Just quite similar to how we did this register. So this register controller, first of all, we need to handle the requests. That means whatever the user is submitting, we have to grab that data that the user is submitting. So we check if the request is post, then we get those data. So, but in this current case, it will only be these two data, username and password. So we won't be using email and confirm password anymore in this case. Then we can also check if it is not empty, ensure that they are not empty as well. Similar to this, we don't need this anymore because we're not confirming any password. We don't need to hash any password. Anyways, we shall see the steps as we are going anyways, but I'm just letting you understand the logic kind of like still looks similar in a way. Well, at least the initial logic. So request, then check if it is post, then get the input data that's been stored in those form fields. By the way, let me confirm the login, the names of the inputs to be sure that so email, password, okay, it's the same name. Okay, so yeah, I'm just going to import the request class and then add the name of the object, which I will name as request. Mind you, the stuff is imported here. There's a fast way of importing stuff in VS Code. For example, again, let me do it again. Like now, once I know that I'm trying to import, I need a class request. As I've typed the request, notice what you are seeing here now. The first one now is the one I'm actually intending to use. So I can choose to click on it, or I can click on my tab key on my keyboard. So if I click my tab key, it will automatically like insert everything. Like if I see now, I just click on my tab key now. Check here, this thing already done there here now. So it has already imported the stuff. Then I'll just add the object to it. So this is just like VS Code shortcuts that I used to use. Or if you don't like, if you don't know how to do it another way, once you see this red line underline, just right click and click import class. So those are the two ways you can get to do it. Anyway, so import public, so request, right? So first we want to check if it's a post request. So if the request method is a post request, let you do certain things. Else, if it's not a post request, let's throw an error. How do we still write those errors again? Let me go to that register. Invalid. So just paste this here. So if truly it's a post request, which I expect it to be a post request, I think we have to let me check if I made it post here. Yeah, the form method here is post. So next thing is for us to get the data that the user is putting inside these two places. So as usual, we're going to use this same format. Why am I closing this register? So we're going to use the same format that we used there. So let me just copy this, so I'll paste it here. So this will store for us the email and the password. Then let's check to ensure that both of them are not empty, like to show that it's not blank. Make person not submit something blank for us. So we have to ensure that they have something there. So the same thing we did here in the register, we ensure that they are not empty. So I can just copy this check code and also paste it here. But in this our case, we only need two fields. So I will remove the username here. We don't need the username. We also don't need the confirm password. So I'm only checking for the two fields, email and password. So all fields require blah blah blah. So We're going to change this one to login. That means once the user tries to submit something that is empty, this error will come out. All fields are required. And as it's coming out, will still be in the login page. So we will see it here. So that's the first check. So the next, so that means if it passed through this place, that means if there is data in this two stuff, so which means this place will be ignored because it will be false. So to go to the next line of code. And now this next line of code is the real login functionality now that we are doing. So I don't know if you remember, we did this stuff here initially. So this is how remember this class is coming from this class here. Because this is our user authentication, that's the name of the class here. And as it stands, this is the object of the class. And for us to access a method inside this class, we need to use the object of that class, then the name of the method. So I can just copy this here, paste it. This is the object of the class. So I need to access the login method. So login. It's that simple. And remember, we're using this because that's how we always access stuff within our class, within a single class. We've done this earlier when we are doing OOP. Now, if you notice here, we're having an error here. It's expecting 2 arguments, which is reasonable because, yeah, indeed, we have 2 arguments here. So it's expecting we put an email and a password. And the email is here, the password is here. So that's what is being fetched. So email, we enter inside here. The password will enter inside here. Then this login method will do the rest automatically, which is all of these things that we've done here. You can see how straightforward, how the logic is being made. So we just get those 2 data, put it inside this method, and then this method will take those data and process it and check, verify the password, check everything is correct and is inside the database. And if everything is fine, return user. That's what is coming out now. After this place, what's coming out here is return is the user that is being returned. So let me just save it here as user also. So which means, well, since we're returning user from here, which means like all of this will just be like, say, it's holding user. So we are now saying user is equal to user, which, well, doesn't mean anything as much. So, but remember that user we're talking about is an associative array. It holds a data that is holding this whole stuff here. That's the point there. So in as much as it's returning something, it means it is true. So that's why if probably an issue happened here, it will return false. So the fact that this place is true, which means it's holding something positively. So we can check if user, which means if it is true, to show that this thing went well without any issue. So if it is true, what should happen? So what it should happen is that we need to add we need to put this our session, our user data in the session, which means it's a sign of saying we have logged in. So we're putting this user inside our session, which means that the user data is inside the session in a way. So it's a sign of telling PHP that, okay, now they are logged in. And where should it take us once the person logged in? Once the person is logged in, which page should it take us to? So I want it to take us to the dashboard page. We created the dashboard page earlier. So the dashboard page, and this is the route for dashboard. Then as usual, we need to exit. So this is the route for the dashboard routes. I think when we go to the controller routes, we have dashboard here. So this dashboard, to access this route controller, then inside this dashboard controller, we have the front end page. So to access that front end design for our dashboard. So that's just it. So this is everything if it works fine. So let's check for if there's an error. So if there's an error, let it print for us an error message. So we're going to use session as well. I think we did that in registration also. So else session error. So we can just tell the person that they put an invalid data for this case. So since we're dealing with login, so session error, this would be so here we'll say invalid email or password. That means if you know work, that means person don't put wrong details. Now why did you know work? So either the password or the email is not correct, or the email, yeah, or the email is not correct. So yeah, let's reload the same page. So let's want the session error message to show in the same page, which is the login page. Then exit. So let's see. Let's test this implementation if it's going to work. Let me just refresh this page. What's wrong with this stuff now? So refresh. Let me intentionally put a wrong data. So wrong email, wrong password, login. Can say invalid email and password, which is what is coming here. Invalid email and or password. Because the wrong details I put here, I put the wrong details here. I put a wrong detail here. Then it checked here to ensure that those fields are not empty, and indeed they are not empty. So it skipped this whole code because surely I shall put something, whether now a correct one or not, a wrong one, no concern this particular place. This one is just to check that, ensuring that there's something there, so it skipped this one. Unless there is nothing here, that's when this one will run. So it goes to this next part. So the wrong information I put, the wrong email and the wrong password I put a wrong email here, I put a wrong password here. So that two data enters inside this our login. So the wrong email enter here, the wrong password enter here. So the next thing now, the wrong email enter inside this place. Wait, is the email wrong? Let me see. What email did I even put? I think it was test. Let me check the database. Okay, there is test. Okay, that means right email, wrong password. Okay, so now the email is correct. The email is correct, but the password is wrong. So what happened now? Then the email will bind the email. That's the test@test.com. The email will bind it to this SQL statement, which means once it checks, so the SQL says select everything, all the columns coming from the users table where we have test@test.com, and here we have test@test.com. That means it's all this row, all this column row that is coming out. The ID is 1, the username is test, email is test@test.com, password is test123. So that's what is inside here that is being fetched out. Now that's what is inside this array here. Now we check this user. Yes, this one is fine. That yes, the user who is present because the email is valid. But now the issue here came from this password verify, because the password we put here, I put a rubbish password here, and why the password that is inside the database is different. So this one caused conflict. So that means this thing can't run. That means this entire condition here is false. Then this false executed, this false returned. So as this false returned out of that login function, which means this user here is holding false, which is talking about this particular user. Remember, this is about if it is true, this one will run. But else, if it is false, else. That's why this else ran invalid email or password. So that was the steps that happened in the process, each of those steps. Now, if we are to put something real, the real data is there. So like that, this one is the real data, while the other one is back and 1, 2, 3. Let's see, login. You can see I logged in and it redirected me to that exact page. Welcome to dashboard. Let me explain again that process that happened. So I put the correct email, I put the correct password. Then this one checks to ensure that there are data inside those two inputs, which indeed there are. So that means it will skip this one. In as much as they are not empty, it will skip this code and go to this next code. In this next code, it took the correct email I put and it took the correct password I put. It puts it inside this login method that is coming from our objects of this our user authenticated class, which is coming from this our class here. Then the login method is coming inside of that class. We have the login method here. So it's holding the original email and the original password. Then it checks inside there. It binds the value of that email, which is lexis@gmail.com. It puts it inside here and checks for all the columns for that particular user that have that email. And as it stands, that email, this is it. So it fetch out this whole data in an associative array format. This whole column, the ID 3, the username backend, all of them, it fetch them in an associative format, which is what is being held there. You can see this place, fetch assoc, like fetch associative. So it's fetched it, and that's what the user is holding. Then inside here, this is still true because the user is holding something tangible. But now checking this password verifying. So I imputed backend 123 here. While what is inside here is coming from the database. From that, remember this is an associative array, so we fetch out the password key, which will hold the value of that password, and the value of that password is this our encrypted password. But this has nothing to do. PHP automatically can process it, and like it will process that long strings and process it to be sure of the real text. So this is something the function is doing by itself automatically for us. So PHP will know regardless that okay, it is a correct password. It will compare the hashed password with the normal English password. It will unhash it in a way, so now it's everything they do inside. So as it check this place, that means this one is true. So if this one is true and this one is true, and then that we're using the AND operator, that means both sides are true. That means everything here is true. So that means this return user is going to come out, not this false. So this return user is going to come out. That means whatever we're calling out in this method, login method, what is returning out is this login user data, which is like the login user data, like the array and all of that. So that is what is being stored here. So now we check this if condition. If this user is true, which indeed it is true, because it shall be something positive, not an error. So since it is true, let's add it to the session. That means let's make the user logged in. And let's redirect the user to this dashboard page. That's why I was redirected to this dashboard page here, which is welcome to dashboard. If I even check here now, if I enter the console of my browser, if I go to the network, source, performance, memory, application, okay, yeah, application. If I check session, you can see now session storage. So this is a sign that the session has stored something, like I'm logged in inside this inside this page. So that's the sign that's what all these session things we used to do. It's just kind of like a way that your browser can trigger that know that okay, this person is logged in or is trying to log in a way. So local storage, so it's holding data. So all of this, if I delete these sessions now from there directly, it will assume that I've logged out in a way. So it's not something we should be doing directly from here anyways. So this is just what so we successfully done the registration and the other stuff, right? No, let me do something. Let me, where is it? Application, session storage. Let me clear the session. Let me refresh. Still showing cleared. Refresh. Still showing. Okay. I'm still logged in. Anyways, what I wanted to check. Let me use a incognito tab. Yeah. So localhost 200 register. So let's just try everything afresh. So blah blah. Let's see. Blah blah at gmail.com. Blah blah 123. Blah blah 123. Register. Registration successful. Blah blah at gmail.com. Blah blah 123. Login. Good. So everything is working fine. Let me check my database if blah is here also. Blah. Okay, so it's all. Let me this one again now. Could not save configuration inside blah. It's working fine. This page from my admin Wala. I'm trying to think of something else to maybe add before we call it a day. Okay, let me try something. Let me go to incognito tab again. Localhost 200 / dashboard. Okay, I've noticed something. Anyways, let's stop here. So from tomorrow, I say tomorrow, from the next class, we'll try to, I noticed something that we are yet to protect the routes. So even this dashboard, anybody can access it, even though you are not logged in. So we need to check session and all those kind of stuff that we used to do to protect our routes so that only a login user that can access some pages. You get that kind of thing. And also we'll do our logout stuff. But right now there's no way we can log out from here like this. Except we stop this thing and start it again. So that's the only way right now. So that's what we'll continue from the next class. Then we'll go forward to Phony Stats. Then we'll import our templates, which are yet to also do. So like I said, today's class will be very quick and light. So far, is there any question? And I believe by next week, like what I told Chinazor, so let me just repeat it. So wherever I get to stop next week would be where you guys will continue from as your project. So far,
wherever you will continue.
Yeah. But anyways, the place I will stop will be a place that I will intentionally know that the remaining thing is something you should be able to do.
You have not done those ones.
No, the remaining part will be something I know that you guys will know how to do, or something that I've already done.
Okay.